Welcome to Everything's Fine. We're shipping on time. Hear the stories behind your favorite games from the creators who built them with your hosts Rick Neal and Gary Geddes. Now let's start the show.
Gary, welcome to another fantastic, exciting episode of Everything is Fine. We're shipping on time with Gary and Rick and Gary.
Oh, thank you.
This episode, we have one of my oldest and dearest friends who actually invented the delete key. And
that's a useful key.
Thermal cooling. Yeah, he invented thermodynamics. So without him, there would be no flying. So
Okay.
Currently,
he's
he's in charge of all cool things in the world, all put together. And now I'm going to introduce you to my dear friend, Mr. Jacob Neri. Welcome, Jake.
Welcome, Jake.
What's up, fellas? Thanks for that intro. I appreciate all the accolades, and that's entirely not true, but I'll take it. You know what? At my age, it all sounds cool.
Yeah.
How's the pod
Super
going,
happy to
fellas?
have you.
Yeah.
Good. I haven't seen you since GDC. How are things?
Things are good. Yeah, can't complain. Family's good. Work is good.
Love it.
You know, and happy to be here with you guys. For sure. Excited you guys have been getting this going. It's really cool to see. I've seen some great clips. You get a lot. It seems like you're getting some legendary people on here, huh?
We didn't know they were legendary way back when.
Yeah,
that's
just
right.
friends.
They
takes
became
a while.
legendary,
Yeah.
just like you.
You know, yeah, it's not an overnight sensation. It's
Like you're legendary.
for
You're
you.
living through the inside of EA getting pulled back into privacy. You're living on the inside of all that as EA gets absorbed to the public fund of Brian Ward and Sabi.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, you know what? So I've been at EA 3 times. The first one, Rick, you had a hand in, as you know, 1996, my first year there.
That was a
I've
good
been there
story.
3 times. Been through different eras. EA has certainly changed a lot, but I'm proud to be at EA. You know, it's been a place that's been really good to me, been good to my family. I met, I don't know, 4 or 5 of my best friends in life at EA. You
Right.
know, I think that there's a lot to be happy about. And going back to Redwood Shores now, you know, every day, it's cool. It's cool to see that place, see what it's become. And I remember just like yesterday when we first moved in there, you know.
When we were building it,
Right.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
You
Yeah,
were,
going
you were
over
part of the
and-
Madden team, and we took over the whole 6th floor, remember?
Yeah,
You got
of
those
course.
big giant cubes, and yeah.
So
And, let's-
refresh my memory, Rick and Jake. Jake, did you come up through CS and join Rick like so many other people, or did you come straight into production?
No, I didn't come straight into production. I was working at a place called the Pacific Athletic Club, which is right across the street from
Yes.
where Redwood Shores is now.
Right.
And I worked my first year there. I worked in the locker room, which is awesome. You know what I mean? And
I
then,
had one of those jobs.
which
then
is awesome.
it was awesome. And then I got a chance to work the front desk. And so
Okay.
the front desk at the Pacific Athletic Club is a who's who of like Bay Area people. So it was
Right.
like, you know, checking in Barry Bonds, checking in Jerry Rice, checking in Matt Williams, you know, Royce Clayton, I can't remember his name, from the Giants. So lots of people. And there was also somebody named Sue Transit that would come in there quite a bit. And so, you know, and I was pretty good, you know, you just, hey, Sue, go ahead. You know, I wasn't sweating people for their cards. And
Right.
one day Sue came in and said, hey, my husband, he works at EA and they're hiring for testers. Are you interested in testing? And I was like, you know, so I grew up even before that. So I grew up on the peninsula. I grew up knowing that Sega was right there, EA was right there. I was a huge, you know, Nintendo junkie. I mean, I came up on this kind of thing, right? Like we played
Yup.
just voraciously from, you know, like 6th grade through high school. So I knew that was all around, right? And so now all of a sudden I met Sue, and her husband happened to be Don Transith, who you guys know, who's a senior vice
Legend.
president of sports marketing or something like that.
Yep.
So he helped get my resume in there, which really was not much of a resume. It was like I worked at the Pacific Athletic Club, and then it was like,
And I play games.
because I was pretty young. I think I was 20 years old. At the
You had
time.
large opinions about the games you played, too.
Yeah, I did. And Don's advice was just write every game you've ever played down on a piece of paper and hand it in. And so I interviewed a couple times. I interviewed with Cody Murray and Actually, no, my first round of interviews was Rich Rogers, Ken Rogers, and Sean Jacoby for NHL.
The Rogers brothers.
Wow.
Yeah, and Ken is still at EA. I love Ken.
Yep.
Rich is around doing well. I don't know where Sean Jacoby is, but shout out to him because he helped get me in there. But I didn't get that job. They called me back. I was devastated. I said, "Dang, I really wanted to work I really wanted to work there." But the call was, "Hey, we don't think you're right for NHL, but we'd like to see if you'd be interested in talking to the Madden team." And I was like, "Dude, like, yeah, hell yeah, that's way better." I actually know football. So then I interviewed with Cody Murray and Matt McKnight, and that interview was only over the phone. And I remember those two guys were laughing the whole time. If you know those two guys in that era, they were jokers, right? Good guys, don't get me wrong. But I was like, I bombed it. There's no way I could get in there. And then they called me and said, "Yeah, you're hired." So I came in straight to test, and I tested that first summer on PlayStation, and then the SKUs were staggered. So PlayStation would go first, and then I think PC would go. Rick and Sean were running PC. And so somehow over the course of that summer, I was able to ingratiate myself with Sean, I think, and Rick. And they were like, "Dude, you got to stay on for PC." And so we did that. And then that kind of ended, and I got sent over to Central Test. So I was in the Central Test. I was testing Soviet Strike. And the best part about that is one day, that was in another building. So there was like 1450 Fashion Island Boulevard, the staggered building.
Yeah.
But then across the street, which I don't know what that was, Ricky probably remember.
It was 1510.
Yeah, that was where the Central Test was. And that was much more, that was a stale environment. That was like you're in there to test. Like,
you're not in the dev team,
We're not having fun. You're just test your ass off. And then the phone rang one day because we had phones. Can you imagine that? An office building had phones. Now there's no phones. And I think Paul Niehaus picked it up and was like, yeah, okay. And he's like, "Jake, you got to go. Rick just called. They're going to hire you on Madden." And I was like, woo. I remember walking out of there like, "Hey, see you fellas. Yeah, I'm mad. What's up? Let's go."
Yeah, for sure.
And that was it. And then I was product analyst was my first full-time job.
Okay.
And going from like a temp tester to product analyst was a huge pay cut, by the way, because we were testing like 80 to 100 hours a week.
Yeah, you were part-time. You weren't a full employee, so you got paid hourly. And then product analyst is like, that's just salaried.
Yeah, they would pay you
$5 a year. Exactly.
You'd get time and a half, and then double time, I think. Nice. I can't remember what double time was, but almost all of us were at double time because our teams were only like 4 people. We weren't.
You had to test the entire game. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny because now, QA, I mean, is such an impressive discipline. It's got it's got like science process. It's got teams and people and weeds. In those days, we were like, all right, just test the game. What does that mean?
Playtesting.
Play it for 80 hours a week. So anyway, so that was that. That was how I got in, and definitely changed my life for sure. Certainly, like meeting Sean and Rick early on, and then being a part of that team was just like it was as if I had died and gone to heaven. Truly, it was like I'm making
so
games.
Awesome.
I'm making a football game that I've played since I was a kid that I love. Yeah.
I remember when we moved into 1450, and I think you were still testing then before you went back to Central, and we put you way off in the corner with Dan Wasson, and this new guy came in, Mike McHale. And he wouldn't stop talking. It was Mike McHale in New York, Mike McHale, right? And I remember you come to my cube one day, you're like, "Dude, you got to get Deep Purple out of there, man. We can't deal with it anymore. He's just talking too much." Or you called him Black Sabbath or Deep Purple or something, because he had literally just come off the road from touring with some band and joined the Madden test, found out he could test Madden, right? But I remember that.
I think his use. I think in every game that we would play, he would always be Deep Purple. So I know. So he's a metal. So he loves Deep Purple. But that crew that we had in that era, there's a lot of legendary folks in there. Rudy Ellis is another guy. Just talked to Rudy. Right. We had Chuck. My first year was Chuck Park, Steve Jones, Dave Jimenez. Wass was in there. I think the next year, Dorf was in there. I think you guys have talked to Barry Dorf.
Right.
Rob Jones was there. Rob is still doing really big things at EA. I got a chance to catch up with him recently. He's driving like the creative for North American football out of Tiburon. Cool. So he's doing great. So we had a lot of people in that era that were that have gone on to
turned out to be legends. Yeah,
good stuff.
And then you stayed at EA how long before you ended up? Didn't you leave there to Where, Konami or?
Yeah. I went to Konami. So that was probably like 2000 or something. So I think my first stint was about 4 years.
Okay.
We had stopped working on Madden, our team, because I think Madden got absorbed by Tiburon. And
Yep.
so
Right.
then I was working on a never shipped Road Rash 2, which was actually really, really cool. And there's a bummer that we never got that like to progress, because it was really neat. Even now we run into people that are like, I saw a guy at campus the other day, I was telling him about Road Rash, and they're like, you got to make that again. People love
Right.
Road Rash. It's like such a legendary game. But we were
Yeah.
building that with a company named Avalanche Studios in Salt Lake City. Still another great friend of mine is out there, Jeff Castilia, a dude that I met. I guess one theme about that I know all of us always talk about is all the people in the game business. It's like, yeah, it's great that we're making games. It's nothing. You're making people happy, right? Like that in itself is cool. We're in the happiness business.
Yeah.
But for me, the most important thing that I've found through the years is just all these different people that I've met that are so important, or that inspire you to do your job. At some point, all these jobs are like making shoes, right? You're still just in there, hammering every day. So you got to do it with people that you like, right? And so, yeah, so that Road Rash game was really special, but we didn't get it. It didn't advance, and that's fine. And then, I think I was at that point.
You were so mad because I left the Madden team.
That's true. Yeah, we could talk about Rick's betrayal when he broke my heart.
Yes, that is the right term.
No, you know what it was? So if people don't know, so Rick was working on Madden, and then I think the tea leaves were blowing that we weren't going to be doing Madden anymore. And I think didn't you go to Xbox right away, Rick? Is that
no,
right?
I was with Gary and we did the James Bond game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Right. So even worse, because we had to see you every day. But Rick comes in one day and says, "Hey guys, I just want to let you know, I'm leaving the team." And for me, I was personally very devastated because, I guess as a young guy, I had never been in a corporate environment, and we had a team.
Yeah.
And like this team was,
that's why it worked.
Stay together forever.
That's why it worked.
And Rick was, and exactly, we were going to stay together forever. And Rick was always going to be our leader, because Rick is a great leader and a guy who you want to run through the wall for, a guy who makes it fun, a guy who makes sure you're happy, a guy who says, you know what, if you're not feeling it today, just go home. I'll always forget being grumpy at work and Rick being like, hey, it's okay, just go. You don't have to bang your head against the spreadsheet today. Like, it's okay.
There's always tomorrow.
So he was our guy. He was definitely all of our, hero. And then all of a sudden he was leaving. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, you can't do that.
You're so
This is a joke, right? It's a bad joke.
Right. You're bringing us with you, right? We're all
yeah, exactly. Like we're going down there. Is that what we're doing now? So no, it was good. It was that's actually been a critical lesson for me in my career, because I've had people, like I've run some teams recently, big high power teams with some of my favorite people, and they would leave.
Yeah.
They'd be like, how, in my 20-year-old brain is like, how could you leave? But now my brain that's gone through that before, it's like, awesome. I can't wait to see your success.
Yeah.
There's something in that early on that I had to learn, and for sure, tough at the time. But like Rick and we'll be forever friends. So it's fine. It was good.
Yeah. What is one of the things you learned from one of your mentors or teachers that you've always taken through all your jobs?
Well, since we're on the topic of Rick, I'll talk about a Rickism that I like. It
always comes down to that.
It serves well in life too. It's, Rick would say, never be afraid to have the hard conversation. And I think there's a when you're part of a team, or when you're in a family, or if you've got a partner, I think people feel like the hard conversation has to be negative or with conflict, right? Like you can't approach a situation, something's wrong, like I'm going to be angry and we're going to do the feedback that way. Right. And I think Rick's take was, you don't have to bring anger to the hard conversation. It's just like about holding each other accountable to what we're trying to achieve, and you can do it with kindness and empathy. And so I think that's a good one. I like that one for sure. That served me well in life and as a parent, to be honest, because you have kids and you have to have the hard conversation sometimes. And I think, there's ways to approach it. And I think, we try to approach it with some empathy on where they're at in their life. So I'll give that one to Rick. That's one from you.
That's good.
And that was a
Rick
unique
loves
team.
It when the feedback is about something he said. Like that's his favorite thing. So
I only invite people to talk that will talk about what I told
just
them.
hoping that they'll say something from his past. I kid.
Yeah.
I've got
No.
there's others though. We had talked about this recently. So we worked with a guy early on at EA named Scott Orr, and Scott I think was pretty integral in like he had the studio high score, very integral
Yeah.
to a lot of the games in the Sega and PlayStation era. And I remember one day when we had moved into the new building, we sat in the area with Scott, and Scott loved games, and he would want to talk about games.
Like
And
the best game tuner ever, maybe.
Ever.
Like,
Right.
yeah, he was really really good. And I remember we were sitting there, and I was just complaining about it. So I think he had asked, like, "Have you tried this game?" I can't remember what it was. And I sat there and listed off all the things that sucked about it. And he was like, his quote was like, I don't care about what's bad about the game. Anybody can tell me what's bad about a game, but can you tell me what's good about it?" And
Right. Well, that's
I think games, all games, there's something good about them. Even the games that get Metacritic bombed, because you got people that are rating them poorly. There's something in there you can learn from. And I think what I liked about his approach was it was an academic approach to games, like play games and learn them. I had come up thinking games were just things you do and that are fun. Hey, this is a great distraction. He was playing games because of that, but also to learn about what was good about them. And that stood out to me in a lot of different ways. I think there's a life lesson in that for sure, because you can always look at the crummy side of a situation. But in my years of being around, our kids and in school, I've had a chance to talk to a lot of kids and a lot of classes about how to get into games. And one of the things I always talk to them about is like, you should play a lot of games, and you should be able to articulate what you like about those games. Think about them at the
Right.
system level. If you like to play a game and you get to, craft, like, what is it about that system, and really try to break it down. And so that's like advice that I pass on. I've passed on to probably hundreds of kids at this point, because it's like, I think it's important. If you want to make games, I think you should play them. You should be articulate about them. You should know why you think they're good. And yeah, of course, tell us what's bad about them too, or what you would do different. But I think, you can learn more if you're just looking at like, what is going right in there. So yeah, so that's another one.
I love that, because Rick and I have talked about this in multiple conversations, especially, Jake, if you're talking about the craft of making games,
Right.
because there's a lot of people that came into the industry in the 90s and later that were there to publish the games, right? And they were
Yeah.
bringing experience from other industries of, how do you build brands and how do you sell a product? But they
Sure.
weren't necessarily gamers, and they weren't there to make games. And so I think that there was a time in the industry where we had to sort of find that balance and make sure that the game makers were real game makers and not just product people.
No, for sure. I mean, frankly, I think it's one of our industry's challenge, but I do think that I spend a lot of time playing a lot of indie games these days, and I'm truly
Right.
inspired by what's going on there. And I know there's a lot of people that are not having success, and their games are not great, and that is what it is. But there's a fertile ground of people that are breaking through, that are approaching it because they love games and they want to be there, and they're not just business people. And so I think
Right.
I think it's out there. I think the industry has changed quite a bit. It's gigantic, right? It's got
Yes.
huge franchises that require a lot of attention. More people are playing less games. There's not as much game discovery, right? It's like if you're into Fortnite now, that's what you do. That's your life.
Yeah.
You're not out poking around, which is why I have my Steam page open right over here. I'm bound to go scrolling through later today and wish listing some things, just because I really love the discovery and seeing what people are doing. And again, going back to Scott's lesson about like playing people's games and going like, ooh, I really like that, and so it's their game makers are out there, Dave. But for sure, if you go to GDC now, there's a lot of business dudes running around trying to
Right.
make it. Let's make a deal.
Right. It's ironic. You're at one of the biggest game companies, and yet you're championing indie games. I love that.
But I love our games too, though. Don't get me wrong. Like I think
Yeah, I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying I love that you're appreciative of the other side.
Well, I like the totality of the industry. Like
Yeah.
I love the AAA space. What they do is incredible. Again, I was talking to Rob about how they're bringing Madden together. It was just like, holy moly, like that's incredible.
Yeah.
Seeing how they did Battlefield 6, like my God, that's a feat. I was a World of Warcraft addict for 10 years. So like playing in that world, those are the premier major experiences. But then
Right.
take it down a notch. Go play Ball Pit. I was thoroughly addicted
Ball
to
Pit.
Ball Pit. I don't know if you guys have played that, but that game
Yeah,
is
yeah, it's awesome.
hysterically addictive. And so it's like, there's just layers to the game business now that I think are really interesting. And I do think, I'm really inspired by the new generation of game makers. I think that's been something that this is probably another thing that Rick handed down to us, was like trying to empower the next gen. We can't do this forever, but there are so many talented folks out there that, like, that next generation of who's going to make these games is really cool. So yeah, so I like all games.
What is some advice you give to the youngins when they ask you, besides find out what's good about a game?
Well, I think I think one of the things that I've tried to do is drill into what's your interest. Like, when you think about being in games, what is it that you want to do? And almost every kid will say, like, I want to be a game designer. And I'm like, okay, so then you need to really focus on math. Like, math needs to be, I think they're like, what? Why math? Like, I want to be a designer. I want to say, like, make it cool, make it blue, make the sword swing. And it's like, yeah, but game design is a lot of math. And the best game designers that I know have the sort of left brain and the right brain. They can do the math and they can figure out how to do that. So I think it really depends on where the interest lies. But, I think just, that's really the core of what I try to drill in on, because kids are all different, right? Like, some of them are like, I want to be a narrative designer. Okay, great. Well, then we got to focus on writing. And these days, I think a lot of what I would say too is start doing it. Like, there's tools available, tools that none of us ever knew how to use are readily available for kids to just get going. And I mean, hell, there's like summer camp, for making games. So I was like, go to games camp. Like, that sounds awesome. You
You could just sign up for online games camp for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. There's all the energy is amazing, especially on the indie side. I think you're right. The innovation's coming out of indies right now, because that's where the risk is, right? With the bigger companies, it's hard to take those risks.
Yeah, for sure. And I do see it's hard for some of those folks to break out. That's some games. I think I don't know the exact name. The Chameleon title that I read today sold 20 million copies or something. Those happen with some frequency, but the amount of games that come in to the indie space and don't do that is astronomical compared to the ones that break through. So I do think there's some ways that we could improve discoverability on some of those games. But I think also some of it is people are saying, like, hey, it's not as hard to make games anymore, so I'm just going to make a game. And I think some of the best indies surround themselves with people that have made games. They either have advisors, or a couple of them are veterans. There's something to be said with, like, I think of EA as like video game college. Like, I went to video game college. I learned how to do it from the ground up over the course of, years and years and years of rigor. And so that's, if you just jump in, you might not get that, right? Like, you might just be like, toiling by yourself for a long time, hoping you make something happen. So,
and expectations of success are totally different than they were in the 90s. What was EA Rugby? We sold like 5,000 units and we were super happy.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was EA Rugby, right?
Right.
And when you reuse the engine and made it, but now, if you make an EA game, it's better sell 3 million or 5 million, or it's a failure, right? So I think that's also what's changing, is indies can go make a full-on business selling 100,000 units over 2 years, really, if they charge enough, right? So it's a business.
Yeah.
You touched on it. Like, I think discovery is a huge issue as well. Do you have thoughts on how to improve discovery, or like, how are you finding your new games other than through just searching through Steam?
Well, I actually don't have the answer to this, Gary, but I do actually think about it a lot. But I will say, so Steam recently, to give them credit, another big powerhouse in our business, they've done a really good job recently introducing some neat features. Shareable wish list, I think, is neat. So if you guys want to see what I have on my wish list, I can share with you. They've introduced this calendar that's like a weekly, monthly calendar where I can see all the things releasing, and I can see how that matches up to my wish list. So I think they're doing a really good job helping discoverability. But I definitely think there's got to be a way to create better, like, word of mouth or something. I don't hear it enough. I spend time on Twitter, even though I know it's an evil platform, and I see a lot of people there that are sharing things about indies. So I look there a lot. That's oftentimes a place where, the 10 or 15 people that I know that are trying to do this, they're trying to be personalities in that space, and they're trying to put out, like, games. If you follow them, you'll see stuff, and sometimes you look at it and go, oh, that's cool. I'm going to wish list that, or I'm going to buy it. And sometimes it's like, that's not for me. So even those folks, I'm not sure that there's discretion in what they're putting out. I think they're putting it out to put it out, kind of thing. So I think there's got to be a way But yeah, I don't have the exact answer yet.
I like that idea of discovering somebody that's, you feel akin to, who's
For
also
sure.
looking at games. Like, that's a great
Yeah.
way to build your own gaming community. Because
Yeah,
we're
for
just
sure.
older. Like, when we were young, we were all playing games together. So we would just talk
Totally.
while we're playing another game about what else are you playing. And
Right.
it's just I'm not playing with as many
And
people
we didn't have
anymore.
every game ever made accessible to us at the drop of a hat, right? We
Yeah,
didn't
for
have
sure.
that input. We had to go to the computer store and buy what was there.
Dude, you had to go to Toys
Or
R
the
Us.
EA library. Like,
Right.
The EA
remember the
library.
EA
Oh yeah,
library?
the EA
Yeah,
library was
dude.
so cool.
That
I
was
just remember
dope.
the old days. You go to Toys R Us, you got to get the ticket off the wall, and
Right.
then you
Yes.
go over to the game counter. You stand in line and hand it to them. They go over and get you the thing and bring it over, and you'd
Right.
be like, "Yes, all my allowance."
I got Magic Carpet that way. Yeah.
yeah, Magic Carpet. That's a great game. Yeah.
And so you mentioned your 3 stints at EA.
Yeah.
What was your second stint? You left EA and then you did a startup at some point, right?
Yeah, so I went from EA to Konami. Konami was tons of fun. I think Rick and we connected there for a little bit. I went over there because Sean House went there, and he was working on a handful of things. They had the ESPN license, they had the Universal Interactive license, and that might have been the 2 actually that they had. I'm drawing a blank on the third. But the So I started over there working on all the Universal Interactive stuff. So that suite of titles was The Grinch. It was The Mummy. It was Woody Woodpecker Racing.
Wow.
You got to look that up because that is a doozy. And then there was one other one. It was like a Universal Monsters game. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we shipped those games. I think the Monster game might not have shipped, but I remember the Grinch. That was fun because that was literally the days where the build would come in. We had to burning stations, right?
Right.
And you'd have to burn 7 discs and get them over to Harry Kinney at Sony at like 7 in the morning. And if you didn't hit that time, like your whole your street date was screwed. So I remember bringing those burners home and staying up all night burning the Grinch, and then getting up, running into Foster City, handing them in to Harry, and like pleading to make the master. That whole.
Was that the Jim Carrey Grinch specifically?
Jim Carrey Grinch, yeah, for sure. And Sean and I got to go to the premiere of that too, and that was hysterical. We were excited about that. But yeah, that was the Konami era, and then we got to do other stuff. We were working on ESPN, so we had the ESPN license. We did ESPN football. We have famous. We had to move down to Big Bear to help the studio there finish that game. We had a basketball game. We had a snowmobile game. That was a lot of fun. And so that was a fun era over there. And we brought a lot of EA folks over there with us as well. Yeah. And then that kind of like fell apart. And that was and that's where we got the gumption to do a startup. So we basically, because we had been in the world of Konami, we went from like EA where you do a very narrow focused thing and you do it well, to Konami where it's kind of like the Wild West and you had to do everything. And so one of the things that we were doing was we were meeting all these developers that had all these ideas that were pitching us, and we started to connect the dots between, well, what if we tried to bring some of our ideas, find a developer, find a publisher, and kind of do like a production company. At the same time, a friend of ours named John Miller, he was kind of doing the same thing with a company called Highway 1 Productions. And so Sean and Dan and I stepped out and we started a company called Blaze Games. And, it's classic for if you know Sean and Dan and I. And then, and then we just sort of, merged in the very, like not official sense with Highway 1. And we just worked with them. And so we had our game that we were all super proud of. It didn't turn out exactly the way we wanted to. It was a game called 25 to Life. It was a game that was intended to be 8-on-8 cops and robbers in the spirit of SOCOM. So I don't know if you remember SOCOM on PlayStation 2, I think. Game was phenomenal. We played SOCOM like crazy. We're like, dude, this should be cops and robbers. And so we tried to focus on just 8-on-8 strategy. Our publisher was IDOS, and IDOS really wanted a GTA killer. And and so we're like, we're building it, and this is like early GTA, but GTA was still killing it, right? And so we were doing the shooter, and they were like, we need a story, and we're like, we can't just bolt on a story. But we didn't have a choice. We got to work with the publisher, right?
Right.
And so we bolted on the single player, and history is made. The funny thing is, if you look up 25 to Life online, like you'll see people that love that game to death. I like occasionally it'll come across my TikTok like best games of the early 2000s, and I'm like, oh my god, look, they got 25 to life in there. That's funny. But yeah, and that actually I mentioned Avalanche Studios earlier when we were talking about Road Rash 2. Well, we actually built that game with Avalanche. Avalanche now is a Warner company, and they do Hogwarts Legacy. So they do that huge Harry Potter game, like another massive, game that people play. So yeah, so we did that. We had a couple other games. We had a game called Get on the Mic that was not very good, but that was an era where there was still like Rock Band. And so Get on the Mic was like a rap game. You shipped with a mic, it was like, yeah, it was cool. It didn't do what we wanted it to do, but we licensed a ton of really great music into that. Pretty sure our boy Randy Eckhart might have helped on some of that music licensing. And actually, in 25 to Life, we did license a lot of great music into that too. So yeah, so that was that. The tough part with that company was the fact that we were having kids, and we had to feed them. And so being like forever worried about paychecks wasn't working very well for me. So we had, I ended up going from there to LucasArts.
Okay.
To work in the world of Star Wars.
Some stability.
Yeah. They didn't pay a whole lot either, to be honest. But at the same point, it was Star Wars. And another part about growing up in the Bay Area is you're like, oh my God, like they make that right over there.
Right.
I remember I was in San Jose for a while before I moved up to the peninsula, and Return of the Jedi was coming out. And I just remember the fervor. Like, I just could not wait. It was like, oh my God. And then one day my mom got off work early and came when she was like, my friend Danielle's taking you to an early screening at the Belmont movie theater in Belmont. And I was like, what? Return of the Jedi? I remember seeing that early, and I was just like, mind blown.
Yeah.
To be able to go, so again, growing up, I was a Star Wars nerd, if you can't tell. So getting a chance to go work there was cool. And that was in the Presidio, which is an incredible place.
Yeah, that office is pretty amazing.
Oh, it's incredible. And you're upstairs from ILM, it's like, oh, they're making the best movies in the world right in the basement, and it was very cool. It was a cool experience. And that was actually like an early jump into the world of online games. So my responsibility there was on Star Wars Galaxies. So the original sandbox MMO that Raph Koster and Gordon and all those guys made. And so I got to work with SOE down in Austin quite closely. That was really cool. Those guys taught me a lot. But again, it was working in the world of online games, which eventually everybody has gotten to that. But I was pretty early in the world of online games, so I feel pretty fortunate there. Got a chance to get my first death threats, my first doxing, all that kind of thing that come with the territory.
Welcome to Star Wars.
Yeah, but then I also got a chance to work on from the pitch to near launch on Star Wars: The Old Republic. So I worked with BioWare.
Oh, that's cool.
Closely. Yeah, I ultimately couldn't stick around for the launch it was time to go. But I got a chance to work with those BioWare guys from like concept all the way through to we were almost at launch. Some great people there that I'm really close friends with still. Blaine Christine, super good friend of mine. Dallas Dickinson, another really good dude. And so always loved that experience working in online games. And I feel fortunate to have done that because there was a lot of people that were trying to catch up. And actually some people that I knew from that era couldn't find a way to make the jump into the world of online games. There's this moment in time where it's like, well, if you don't have that experience, well, sorry, man. Like you can't well, it's like, how do you get the experience if you can't jump in? Yeah. But those games were so much about the players and the community, and I got a chance to get thrown right into that. I remember going to SOE. If anybody knows John Smedley, he's like OG of online gaming, and he's made some great stuff. But he had this thing called SOE Fan Fest where they would bring hundreds of their players to places like, Vegas, I think was pretty much where they would go a lot. And they would just rent this place and they'd let all these people come in. They would do all kinds of panels and, we'd have to go and interact with all these people. And you really get a sense that the people that are playing these games know way more about them than you as the person making them ever could. It's like they're spending 40 hours a week in there, and you're like, yeah. And I remember even playing like those games and being surrounded by elitist jerks, and they'd be like, they'd always joke about, well, this isn't real life, and I would go see these people and see how much joy they got out of our games, and I was like, I think it is real life. Like, this is cool. Like, they love this. This is they're passionate about this, And so there's a lot of lessons about the importance of community in there that I think I got to see firsthand, And I remember this one guy. I can't remember his name, but he would see me at FanFest for like probably 3 years in a row, and he would always come up and say, "Jake, can you please tell George that we love Star Wars Galaxies and we never want him shut it down?" I'm like, I guess he thinks I just like, "Hey George."
Yeah.
Like,
at lunch, you'll tell him when you guys are at lunch.
I'd be like, I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
I remember having similar conversations with people about being mad at me at how much people were spending on games, like especially live service games.
Sure.
And I'm like, you have to understand, these people are passionate about this game and they love it and they're getting great value out of this experience. They want to spend this money.
Right. They see value and they're feeling
their
good.
Time. The fact that you're not spending, 30 hours a week in this game, that's
the other fact is that they're judging them to say you're spending money is bad. Leave them alone. It's their money. Do what they want, right?
And they feel like they're getting value out of it. So don't.
Of course they do.
Don't harsh their mellow.
Yeah.
Well, I think though,
don't harsh my mellow, man.
We've done a better job over the years making sure there's value behind what people buy. I'll never forget when one day we got. I don't even remember how this worked in the early days of Apple, but Gabriel, my son, had an iPad. And he's a tiny tot. And I think we must have gotten a receipt or something. Christina's like, "What? Who spent $400 in the Apple store?" And G, as like a 4-year-old, went in there and bought like The Dark Knight. He bought a bunch of movies, but then he played, I swear to God, he was playing like a Kool-Aid game. And he spent like $300 in the Kool-Aid game. Because there weren't as many restrictions,
Right.
Now there's restrictions in place, and as an industry, we're doing a better job making sure there's value behind what we're asking people to buy. And to your point, Gary, there's always going to be detractors that don't like, microtransactions. I totally get that. But I know exactly what you mean.
That's funny. And then how did you end up back at EA? What was your second thing back at EA?
Well, actually, so from LucasArts, I got a chance to go back with the Rickster to Playdom. So Playdom was in Mountain View and focused primarily on Facebook games. So that was another, getting a chance to continue down the path of online service to like free to play.
Live services.
Yeah, live service games.
And then into mobile, huh?
Yeah, and then into mobile, yeah. And so we were Playdom. We were doing some cool things there. I can't remember, what was that one game, Rick, where we had the Tiki Resort?
Tiki Resort, yeah. Blew up.
Tiki Resort. Yeah. That was fun, but I think we shut that down. And
then when Disney bought everything changed, right?
So Disney, I think I got there like 4 or 5 days before Disney bought them, and then things did change, and then I don't know.
Getting approvals took us months. Where before we would just go launch something without approvals. It was awesome, and then Disney bought us, and we couldn't launch anything. So
one thing I remember, one of the most valuable things I remember from Playdom was, I think it was because Rick, I think you took off at some point too, and then we
again.
Yeah, again, like really, this guy.
The betrayer.
Now we have a pattern. Rick the betrayer. And by the way, the drive to that office was terrible. It was so daunting. It made me quit pretty quickly after too. But there was this game. I was working in the studio, and they had this game that they were making called Gardens of Time. And and I remember playing it and going like, man, this isn't going to work, and here I am, like Mr. Game Guy. I know everything,
and not your audience.
This isn't going to work. You shouldn't ship this, So they're like, no, we're pushing it live. Boom. They're doing $1 million a day, in the Facebook era. That was like a big deal, right? And so that was another cool lesson for me, because when I'm like, well, who's playing this game? And it's like, well, it's like a lot of, women who love gardening and have their Facebook profile associated with that. And you're like, oh, okay, so I see this tool can really target people, which I think, has been a point of contention through the years, but they were targeting people that might like the game, and then they were coming in and going, this is really cool. And it really showed me that, like, there's so many audiences out there. You can think something. And I should have listened to, in that moment, I should have listened to Scott Orr and said, what's good about this game, not what's bad.
Yeah. You got your lessons.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I didn't do the math. So anyway, that was cool. That was there. And then so from there, that's when I went back to EA. So good friend of mine, Mike Olson, was over there working on Origin, and he was working for Dave DeMartini, and they had a role on the Origin team. And so I went over there and worked there for a couple of years. And that was also, it was our digital distribution platform. So a different kind of thing. It was kind of games adjacent, but it was a chance to get back to EA. And so, so that was my...
And what Origin titles were those at that time?
Yeah, well,
Do
I
you
remember we
remember?
were working up to like a Battlefield 2 launch that was really important. So it was
And
like
you were
that kind of era.
exclusive digital download for Madden and sports too. That was the other thing, is they wanted to own the store.
Yeah,
That
Okay.
was because it was born out of that Rupture thing that I did with Bing. Remember that, Gary?
yeah, yeah.
And
So
then
I
it
think they
became the
probably,
store, and they thought they were going to compete with the Steam and
yeah,
own a store. Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Michael
Yeah.
Lewis, remember him? He was
Yeah,
Mike
of
Lewis.
course.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Good dude. Yeah, yeah. So that was that, and that was fun. That was, though, I definitely feel like there was a bit of my strengths that were not able to play there. It was a
Yeah.
much more technical job. That I worked with Ken Rogers there again. Coming back to Ken, and he was incredible in that role because he's just an extraordinarily technical dude. And like
Yeah.
me, I'm the guy who, like, my first week at EA, I had to call IT because my computer wouldn't start, and they came up when they were like, "Dude, you have a floppy disk in the drive. Like, you can't start it like that. Do you think to eject that?" And I'm like, "Oh, my bad."
Love it.
So that
Been
was
there.
more, yeah, that was like fish out of water kind of thing. And so then,
Yeah.
yeah, so that didn't last too long. But that was another fun stint. It was so talk about Mike Olson for a second. He and I started the same day at EA, and we were, really close friends right away. We were roommates for a while. He stayed at EA for a long time, and we had always wanted to work together. We were trying to find a way, like, how's this going to work? Dude, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. And so that was really probably the primary driver for me going over there. And then, but kind of like Rick, he bailed right away and went to work at
At
Mythic.
Capital Games.
Yeah, well, no, he was at Mythic first, and
Oh,
I think,
Mythic, right.
yeah,
Oh, that's so
he took off.
funny.
So I'm like, dude, like, really, we were gonna finally work together. We're doing this, and then
Yeah.
that. But then, so full circle, or not full circle, but a little while later, I did actually get to go join him at Glue, and we built a
Okay.
game together that was, we were very, very proud of. So we finally lived that dream in the right way, like making a game instead of like trying to make a wireframes and,
Service.
yeah, and how do
Right.
you download the games and stuff like that. So
Yes.
Well,
Well,
you got to go to Wargaming too in between with
Yeah.
Crazy
Right.
Paul.
yeah, that was fun. Yeah,
Right.
Wargaming was cool. I went there. They were in Emeryville. I live in the East Bay, so it was fortunate, and I got hired by a guy named Jay Cohen. Jay's another one of my dear friends.
Jay's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, great dude, super super smart character, and but also, one of those guys who just makes it really fun. Like, he brings out, he knows how to bring out the best in you. He gives you, points you at what you want to do, lets you go and succeed. And it was really cool to work in a company that had, we were the North American publishing office, but there was, the APAC publishing office, the European publishing office, the CIS publishing office, all working on World of Tanks and World of, warships, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And just got to meet like so many people worldwide, always traveling
Yeah.
internationally. Went to Belarus more times than I can count, which is scary when you think about it now. Spent time in St. Petersburg, which was, really cool. Have some neat friends over there. So that was a great experience. We had a lot of fun. We did some really cool stuff. We did I ended up my before, because ultimately Wargaming closed up a lot of stuff and moved to Austin, and most of us weren't going to go to Austin. And one of our last big cool things we did was called the Let's Battle Tour. What we realized is that all our players were very much like in red states, for lack of a better way to describe it, right? They're the military enthusiasts. They're the folks that love this type of game. And so we started like taking our community events to those territories. So we did the Let's Battle Tour. We did it at Drive a Tank in Minnesota, which is Mankota, Minnesota, I think.
Okay.
It was like summertime, hot as the blazes, dude. I had no idea Minnesota was like that.
Oh
And
my
we had
God.
like 1,000+ people show up to Drive a Tank to play
And it was
games.
1,000,000 degrees in the
Drive the
tank.
tanks. Dude, I remember we had this little baby was out front in the sun crying. And I'm like, dude, we need to take care of this. Like, where do we go? So Drive a Tank had a building that had like an AC unit. So I'm like, hey, get the baby. Like, hey, mom and dad, take the baby over there. Like, do you see the direct sun on your baby? Go in there. I know you want to drive the tank, but like, it's cooler over there. But so we did that. One of the most hysterical ones was we had a sponsorship for the world's largest D-Day reenactment, which is in Conneaut, Ohio, right on some lake. I don't know what it is, but dudes, I got to tell you, it's one of the funniest. I mean, I totally admire these people's passion, but it's also, you're like, wow, we're taking cosplay to the next level.
Yeah, where they pretend getting shot and lie down on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And they have like full, the planes are flying in, the tanks are on the beach. They have these massive cannons that are so loud. You can't recreate how loud it is. I remember I have the
Right.
video on my phone, and you're like, it just doesn't sound that loud. And when you're there, we were just, me and my friend Michael Levin, who was our camera guy, we were just cracking up at how loud it was. It's just deafening. So that was cool. That Let's Battle tour was really neat. We did one on USS Midway. We were in Texas at I can't even remember where that was in Texas, but like Corpus Christi, Texas. There's some ship there. So we did all these really cool installations. And again, it was that was all about community, bringing people together, talking directly to them, making them feel like they were special and a part of something, letting them tell us more about the games than we actually knew, and really trying to make sure that we were engaging them and keep them in our world and let them know that we were interested. So we did a lot of cool
engagement
stuff
of the
over there.
World of Tanks players was insane. I remember I forget what the stat is, but there was some stat about how many teenage Russian boys were playing every week. And it was like some crazy percentage, like over 50% of the boys or something were playing every day. I'm like, okay, that's a good installed base.
Yeah, the two guys that made that, Victor and Eugene Kisley, their story is cool, man, and they really hit lightning in a bottle, and they're both really cool guys. Like I got a chance to see them a lot. I helped a couple times with Victor in his press room at like Gamescom or whatever, and he's a larger than life figure. Man, he's like he's just really cool. And they didn't come up rich, they're like, like hard-working dudes.
But that's a real good example of two guys built a game that they're super passionate about.
Yeah.
And then they went and they built their own community. They didn't have discoverability. Sure. They did it themselves. It wasn't until they were making money, because at Talking Tom, we were selling ads to them. And they were giving us 17 for install.
Yeah.
On that game, because if we could get our targeted player that was the right age and the right demographic and hit all the right things, if our ad hit the right guy and they installed, it was worth it to you guys, because you would engage those guys for a year, right? Your LTV would last. They just built that, but it wasn't about them saying, "Oh, I built this great game, now let me go get discovery." They just built a great game they loved, and then the community just kind of happened around it, because it was the military sim nuts, right? That loved that stuff. Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't know that. We don't grow up around, tank statues and things, but if you go over to Belarus, you're like, oh my God, there's a tank statue. Like, it's like, so that's like a deep part of their.
Did you work with Al King when he was there too?
Yeah, I knew Al. But Al was in our EU office. So probably Eric Whiteford worked more closely with Al, because we had Whiteford on the market side. But we would see.
Remember,
Al
you did an event in Alameda on the Nimitz.
Yeah.
Right.
The
Hornet, did on the
USS Hornet.
Yeah, on the Hornet. Yeah, that's it.
Hornet. Yeah, we did an event there called the Haunted Hornet, and we basically, actually they that's not true. They run a thing every year called the Haunted Hornet. What we did is we took it, we asked to take it over for a night, and we invited all of our players up to that. And so we did have the place was filled with our game machines, and they got to do the tour. They do it's pretty scary actually. they do like one of those haunted house walkthroughs in there, which is very
dark.
Yeah,
it's dark, and the actors, they love it. They're like, this is like, it's Halloween season again. I can't wait to scare the bald guy. And we did this thing where we put GoPro cameras on our eyeballs, because we were very much about video content at Wargaming. We made a lot of video content to engage players. And so you'd be walking through, and then we would have the video of you walking, but then also your face shot, and we would cut those together. And if you don't know how trippy your eyes are when you're scared, you're like, you're all over the place. It's like really, really bugging out. So it was cool. That was neat.
I remember that. I got an invite to that. That was nice. It seems like so long ago, when it was only 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, not that long. You were living in Alameda though, I think. So it was it was easy for you to get over there. Yeah. So then Wargaming turned into Glue, and then Glue turned into getting acquired from EA, and that's how I got back to EA.
And now you're back.
Don't want to jump over the Glue thing. The Glue thing was really important. That was like a chance to work for Mike Olson, and who loved dearly, and he had brought in a really great crew. And I still have a lot of really good friends from that team that are just powerhouse developers, but also really down to earth and really loved the vibe. That was the thing. Like I talked to one of our guys, our art director, and he was like, "Man, we just had the best vibe." It was just really cool. I've talked to Nick Earl about this, who was our CEO, and props to him because he created a really cool culture there. Like it was one of those places where the teams were all kind of flourishing. They were all allowed to kind of have their own culture, but it was very much about success, accountability, driving towards results. And it was a really neat environment there for sure. Going into the city every day was an adventure. Of course, you get on BART, you take BART. It's always something new.
Right. Always an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that game that we were making there was called Disney Sorcerer's Arena. So we were making a CRPG with the Disney and Pixar license. And so, Mulse and I are both big like Disney geeks. So for us, it was like a dream come true to work on that game and to bring it to life.
And back to Disney, right? Because you did the Disney stuff that didn't work at Playdom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then you got to actually ship a Disney game, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we had a good run. Loved it. Had a lot of passionate fans. Saw some really, interesting stuff in that game, but we did a really good job, I think, staying true to the characters. I think that was one of our main things, was like we really want to bring these characters to life in a way that is meaningful, but it's also tough because they have to be combat ready, basically, and not every Disney character is necessarily combat ready. So we had to do a lot of really interesting designs. You really have to dive into the lore of the characters, to try to figure out like, what are they going to do? Like, what does Sully do? I get it. He can punch, but what else, So we really had a lot of fun diving in on those characters. So that was cool. Yeah.
Well, one of the other things we talk about in the show is AI. Are you a proponent of AI? Do you use it in your life? Do you use it in your career?
Do I use AI? Well, this is, yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it. It's an interesting topic, right? So like there's a lot of ways I look at it. I think in games in general, we've always been using technology, right? Technology comes around, games are, we're adopting it. So I think there's no doubt that AI is an important part. But I think the one thing that I find fascinating is that while game developers might be eager to use AI, there's a large volume of players who are violently opposed to the idea of AI. And I'm really fascinated to see what happens when AI adoption really starts to kick in and have an impact on development and how players are going to look at it. I had a chance.
Why do you think they're so opposed?
Well, actually, I thought this was going to come up. And I read this article today and I said, I'm going to read this to the guy. So this woman in the SF Gate writes, she says, it feels absurd and redundant to explain why artificial intelligence is a threat to humanity, because at this point, the evidence is overwhelming. It hallucinates, it erodes public trust, it devours natural resources, harms our communities, and threatens to destroy the arts and much needed news publishing industry. So I think the answer to your question is somewhere in there. I think there's a lot of harsh realities about it, like there's so much cool to be done, but I think that the players hate it. I think that's where they're rooted in, is all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot, right? There's a lot in there about how it can be really, not a good thing. So that's my point is not whether I think it's great or not. What I'm recognizing is that it's a very polarizing topic. And I think, I was thinking about this, I think AI, it needs a better spokesman. Like, I feel like the guys who are out there, AI, it's going to take over your jobs, man. It's going to wipe out everything.
Those are the wrong guys.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't think you're doing a good job. Like, I know you want to become a trillionaire, but I don't know that you're like helping us feel comfortable about where this is headed. So if I'm looking through it through the lens of why people are opposed to it, that's what I think is informing them. Now, on the other side of that, yes, I do use it professionally. I think I'd be a fool not to try to understand it. I know people that are having great success with it, that are doing it with, tons of integrity, but I'm just not going to sit here and go like, I'm not going to be blind to the fact that a lot of people have a really hard time with it. And I feel like we're headed towards that impasse of like, what's it going to mean? Like, what's it going to mean when there's a massive game that comes out and people realize that a lot of it was made with AI? What are we going to see? So I don't know. It's an era that we're in. And so, but I definitely know, it's the tools are powerful and
they're getting better every day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how you actually use the tools? I mean, not necessarily in game production, but how do you use AI in your professional life?
Well, I think like organizing is at the base level. It's just like such a great way of helping me organize. Like I am oftentimes lost in, what was that thing and where is it? And having something that can seek it out, find it, keep track of it for me, help me make sure that I'm on my game. I think that is really fantastic. And then just like, helping me create things that would maybe take me a long time, or that maybe I wouldn't even do a good job at, maybe like writing an executive summary. You're like stressing on like, here's my document and I just want 3 sentences. And I'm like, God, what 3 sentences should I pull in here? And you ask and it's like, how about these? And you're like, oh yeah, that's very
Don't like
helpful.
that? Here's another version.
Helping me see the things that are right in front of my face sometimes are really cool. And then, we do tons of presentations all the time. And I think the opportunity to have something to help me either format or create images for it, is for sure like powerful. And it helps. I guess the one thing I'll say is that like, I'm not an artist, right? So I can't create an image, and I don't always have access to a 2D artist or a sketch artist, so I can go and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Like, can you help me? And then like, ding, here. Okay. So directionally, it helps me express my ideas. I guess that's maybe at the root of it all. That's one of the coolest things is that I have a lot of ideas and I can't always express them, but now I have a friend that can help me express them better. So I see value in that.
My AI friend. I like that.
Yeah.
The communication. The communication you get speeded up so much.
For sure. I do see the value. I mean, back to the idea, this is where I think that the part about I'm really interested to see how players start to change their opinion or not on it, because I do think if I was an independent developer that only had 2 or 3 friends that I want to make a game with, that now I have some really powerful tools that would help me get to a particular place where then I could scale with the right amount of actual people because I was able to prove something without much risk. So I do think there's that, like, to me seems like the most, not the most, but a very practical way that AI can help some of those developers, right? Because it's tough. If you start a team and you got 12 people and you can't get to prototype, man, now suddenly you got to, let 12 people down. Whereas if you could just start with 3 and then get to the place where it's like, now we need to bring on the 12. I think there's something powerful about that. But again,
that's exactly the model that works. 3 smart people can make a whole product.
Yeah.
Really. And they get to the point where they can scale and then figure out a plan, right? See if it's going to be successful, then go figure it out, right? I think you're right.
Yeah, for sure. But, again, I'm not blind to the fact that I don't think everybody feels that way. And, like I'm curious to see how it unfolds. And I think there's people that are, I know you guys are way more astute in AI than I am.
We like to have people believe that, but
yeah.
We're using AI to create that image.
No, we're using AI right now.
I agree with everything you just said. I mean, like I've done the AI music thing for a while, right? When I put stuff out there, I get a lot of backlash. Like people are like, it's AI, blah blah blah. Like I'm just having fun with the tools. Like
you are also being
very judgy about.
You're not putting content out there that you don't like, though. You're not putting out. You like the stuff you're doing. It sounds great, right? It's not like people say it's all slop. Well, if you're the arbiter of writing a book, you could write slop or have AI create. So you have to put your name on it, right? So you have to stand behind what you created, whether you used a tool or not, right?
I take it the same way like Jake's describing it in terms of making a piece of art like that there is music. I play guitar, but there's music that I cannot personally create by myself, and I'm not in a position to produce it and pay people to make it for me. And so these tools allow me to explore ideas that I really couldn't do myself without a lot more time and effort than I currently have, or without paying other people. And so it's just, to me, it's just exploration. I'm not pretending it's art. I'm not pretending these are like the songs of my vision. I'm making content. I'm learning how to use tools, and I'm having fun. And I'm like, don't take it so seriously. Like I'm not asking you to pay me. I'm just putting this out and sharing stuff. So I don't know. I think sometimes people get way too invested in what the AI creations are.
For sure. I think that it's just, again, the density of the reasons people are detractors. They can go like, that's fine, but what about the data centers? Or that's fine. What about water consumption? It's just, again, I think I was just thinking when you were talking, I was thinking of this idea that change is hard, right? Like change is just hard. Anytime there's change. And I think this is like in for all of us as humans, this is a huge change and it's hard. And so
Yeah,
like
Right.
we're going to catch up to it and see. And I think it's fascinating. I mean, think about all the movie makers, Guillermo del Toro, he's got the, I'll never use AI. And on the other side, you got, I don't know if it's Spielberg or Lucas. They're like, yeah, I mean, AI is going to help quite a bit. It's like
Yeah,
right.
it's just a polarizing topic and we're all in the middle of it. It feels like, so it's fascinating. It's a
time
great-
will tell. And I don't, it's not going away, is my opinion.
Nope.
Like, I think the cat's out of the bag.
And it already
Well-
has proven that could be successful to help people, right? So, yes, there'll be bad parts, but it's always with anything. A friend of mine that's into yoga and swamis says, no, you have to spend hundreds of hours meditating and reading these books to earn enlightenment and get to the point where you have awareness. I'm like, what if we could just make a digital avatar and you get there in an afternoon? And he objects to the fact that there's a shortcut. Because you literally can talk to a digital avatar and get the same thing out of him in 20 minutes than you can from reading a book for 5 days, right? The brain works differently that way, right? And he just doesn't want that. He wants to know they all have to read the book, do it the way I did it. It's the only right way. And I'm like, that's what's questioning, right? You have to do the hard work. You can't just get a shortcut and learn nuclear physics from Albert Einstein by talking to his avatar for 2 days. Why not? Right? I don't know.
People learn differently. Everyone doesn't learn the same way, I think you're pointing out.
Right. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, I would think that let's talk about surgery.
Well, look, when they replaced my knee, it was a robot.
AI surgery yet?
When you had your knee, was it a robot or did the guy do it? Mine was a robot. So they hooked me up. Yeah, it hooked me up to a rig, and the rig did all the work. Yeah, they just hook it up. So yeah, okay. I'd rather have a robot do it, dude. Because that guy might be having a hangover. I want him to put his name on it at the end, right? To say I validate this, but
Sure.
I don't. If he's got a hangover, I don't want him.
You want him just sitting there while the machine's working,
machine,
like
let the machine
fine.
Smoking a
how to
cigarette,
operate the machine.
passion into your leg.
Yeah.
Too funny. All right. Well, this is a debate that will continue. I think we're not going to.
It's fun to watch. It is definitely fun to watch. What's
our last question for Rick?
Our question for Jake is, what questions do you have for us?
Well, geez, why did you feel the need to leave us in 1998?
Betrayer.
When we all
your betrayal.
followed you to the end of the earth. How could you fail us so badly? No, I'm just kidding. What questions do I have for you? What you play any games? I like to talk about games. You guys play anything you like?
Good one.
Oh yeah,
Rick, you want to start? You're definitely ahead of me on the indie game scene.
Well, the Pitball has been fun. I've been having fun with Jen McClain's new game called Project Farhaven. It's in soft release, but it's a cozy game. But it's her and Lucian and old gamers, and then some of my mentees from Saudi Arabia finally have games that I can play. A really super hard game called Puppeteer that just beats. It's like Cuphead, and I can never win because it's a jumping timing Twitch game.
Oh yeah.
And then I can't get away from Assassin's Creed ever. I'm still playing Star Trek Voyager. But I'm like you. I'll download 2 or 3 games a week, try them out, and see what hooks. And I like the little RPG games, right? Sea of Stars was one of my favorite games last year. And so I like those kind of games.
Yeah.
The original. Sure. And I heard that Garriott is getting Ultima back.
Yeah, I saw.
So he can make a new Ultima, and I would be into that. That was what got me into gaming in the first place in the 80s. So
yeah, so there's some sort of,
and of course I played Madden and I played FIFA and all those, of course.
Yeah, new Madden is this week. I think it comes out in a couple of days. Actually,
does it drop? Excellent.
Madden's dropping, baby. Get ready.
So early. Remember when it was?
Yeah, but you can update in real time now. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah, we didn't have that option. Yeah.
Right. No physical disc.
You better get it right or else you're screwed. Although we did on PC, we were able to update our rosters. I remember that was a thing that we sort of pioneered.
That was a new feature in 1998. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very cool. But yeah, I'm excited for the new Madden. This is the time of year where every dude I know that's like in his 20s goes like, "Hey, Jake, can I get a Madden?" So I have
reaches out to you.
Throttling the Madden request.
I used to, when I was at Xbox, I would just call and say, "Send me a case of Madden," because everyone at Microsoft would be like, "Oh, can you get me Madden?" Yeah, man. So I just get a case of it, and they'd send me up a case.
I go see Gretchen down there at the store. You remember Gretchen, you guys?
Oh yeah, remember?
She's
still there?
She's still there. Yeah, she's so awesome. She goes, "Hey, hi, Jacob." So it's funny. Nobody calls me Jacob. I think you did at the beginning of this, which I think is funny. My grandma used to always call me Jacob, and my buddy Matt Rossman. Those are the only two people that call me Jacob. And Gretchen. She's like, "Hi, Jacob. How are you?"
That's awesome.
Like, "Hi, Gretchen. Can I please have UFC 6?"
Well,
What about you, Gary?
Really
are you playing games?
I'm busted. I was hoping I could get out. I got to be honest. Mostly what I'm playing are like word and puzzle games right now. So like every day I do the whole New York Times suite. I do my mini crossword, my MIDI crossword. I do the spelling bee. I do connections.
Connections.
Strands. And then I do the full crossword every day. And that's like how I start my day. I drink my espresso while I do all those puzzles. And then recently, I admit, I got back online. I was playing a little Words with Friends solo, not against anyone. And then I opened up Royal Match. Is that what it's called? Royal Match. And I do think it's one of the best UIs in the fucking world. Like the UI on that game is so fucking clean and easy to navigate. I got to give them credit. Like it still sticks with me every time I open it. Like, man, this UI is good.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know what a game that I admire that the UI is the game is like Monopoly Go. It's so like I know why they have a trillion people playing it. It's like it's just snappy and modern, and everything is reacting and
responsive.
Is joyous. So you're just like, dude, you know why you're just like hammering away at the same button. Like this is so cool, you know. Like there's those UI UX is such an important part of the success in those games for sure.
Yes, but I that taps in.
Yeah, actually, Gary, one thing I would ask you that I don't know your whole Zynga stint because you were at Zynga for a long time. Weren't you?
I did. I did 8 years. I was a long time survivor.
Farmville? Will you ever do a Farmville?
I missed Farmville because of the birth of my children. I was talking to Skaggs about joining Farmville, and then my son was being born, and so my daughter was being born. The timing just didn't work out, and. No, I started on Yeovil, which was actually a very cool way to come in because it was the black sheep of that company. Like we had no other game like Yeovil that was really community based. It's a house decorating game, and but it was also the only one that was live social, so people were getting into chat rooms and talking in real time. So you had an experience outside of Facebook on Yeovil in a way. And then I went to Frontierville, which was a great team. Like that was one of the strongest teams I've ever worked for under John Oswald. And so made a great group of connections there. And then from Frontierville, I ended up working with Skaggs. They were running the studios down in Austin and McKinney, and so I ended up being kind of an ops guy and producer guy with Skaggs and David Gray, and then we worked on IP. We did the Empires and Allies game, which was like their little military sim, and then tried to do new IP, and it was challenging. I had a great project that I thought had a lot of legs, and I remember Tim Letourneau, the late great Tim Letourneau, was there as creative director, and I remember he's like, dude, that is a great idea, but we can't build it here. And I was crushed. I was like, I had to accept that, like, he was right. Like, it just wasn't the right environment for that game. And so that one died, and then I tried to do some new IPs. And I've talked about this in the past. I sort of got to a point, like you've probably gotten at your situations, where you just know it's time to move on. And so after struggling with several new IPs, I said, all right, time to move on.
Yeah, new IPs, it's fun, right? It is fun to take a cut at it. You got to get used to hearing people tell you no. I mean, that's brutal because you fall in love with all the things you're presenting, right? Like, I know it's tough.
And you got to be the champion of your idea, so you have to fall in love with it. You know, like it's never going to make it if you don't love it, so you got to love it. But yeah, I had a great run. I have no regrets about my time. I mean, there are things I wish were different there, but I think EA was the university of games for a long time. I think Zynga was the university for mobile, like
Oh, yeah.
Well, I should say web-based games
Right.
and free to play. And then, now they're certainly have finally made that transition to mobile. So great place to learn.
Yeah, that's cool. That's neat that you got to be a part of that for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I remember Frontierville for sure. I can see I feel like
Spent
there's
some hours there.
Or
Well,
something.
you talk about great game designers. Michael Waite was the lead designer on that game, and he was remarkable. Like
that's cool.
his ability to, the cadence on those games, live services games, you're shipping a major feature every week and probably a minor feature every week as well. And so, to have the long-term roadmap that addressed all the corporate and product needs and still deliver product joy. Like I thought that team, that's why I think it's one of the best production execution teams I've ever worked on. Like they just really delivered user joy weekly for so long. Really impressive.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I just remember how that game just looked good. All the games that were coming out from that company, they had a really distinct look. Like I don't know who the art directors were over there, if there was a studio art director or somebody, but they really had their finger on the pulse of like art that would broadly appeal, I guess,
Yeah. That was Romeo. God, what was our art director's name? We had really strong art teams. The art directors were strong, but the art teams were all very good character designers as well as environment design. And is that Romeo Gutierrez? Is that his name? I'll have to look it up. I'll post it because he was excellent. And then the UI guys were good too, so they made it easy to play as well. So really,
that's cool.
Well, that's thanks for your time.
Another good conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me in here. It's good to see you guys.
We'll have to see you
later.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, we did. I think there's lots we didn't cover for sure.
There's lots we didn't cover, and I want to see your suggestion list of games so that I can start.
Oh yeah, I'll send you my wish list. It's vast. It's vast.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. All right, fellas. Well, thanks,
Jacob.
Thanks for this. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Ricardo.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Jake. This was great.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
All right.
Peace out.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Everything's fine, we're shipping on time. Everything's fine, we're shipping on time. Everything is fine, we're shipping on time. I'm hearing good things, we're shipping on time. Take some deep breaths, we're shipping on time. Let me solve that, we're shipping on time. Everything